begin with the context setting, we'll spend some depth, and we'll move on to the policy framework.
It seems that we are having a little bit of technical difficulty. Oh, all right. Ma'am is back. Let's unmute her.
Of ponds and the various rejuvenation techniques that we are following. Essentially, the decentralized wastewater management is something that we're trying in Gurgaon, and then followed by which Anjali is going to speak about how we are trying to bring in the ecological conservation to actually achieve the final target of our water management, improved water management. We'll conclude, and then we'll take up a couple of questions and answers from you all. Please keep sharing your questions on the chat. We'll take them down, and we'll try and answer as much as we can by the end of the conversation. If in case we end up missing it out, we'll definitely make it a point to write down all the FAQs and share it with you on your respective email IDs. So yeah, before we begin with the entire conversation around how we're trying to improve the water management in Gurgaon, we need to understand why do we need it in the very first place. What we see every year is a massive flood and then followed by scarcity, and that happens with the rotational and seasonal changes. Even during the monsoons, believe it or not, a lot of people face the water issues because the clean drinking water is not available, which can be used. And Cherrapunji happens to be one of those examples, which is which is one of the places which receives maximum amount of rainfall in the country. And besides that, is still struggling with water scarcity in the other seasons. But so probably why is the problem that we are facing it? Because probably our focus has always been on increasing the water supply and never really talking about, how do we actually increase the efficiency of water management. So as per the focus, we have achieved the targets. We've tried to create more infrastructure. We have developed so many dams. We have improved the water connection mechanism, but management still suffers. And if we don't improve it, we are going to face a lot of issues that we can see. Depletion of groundwater is definitely something that we're facing a lot in different parts of the country. And then there can be other indirect factors which can be disturbing, like civil unrest or loss of local flora and fauna species, which contribute to the ecological balance in the other ways, but we cannot account for them because it's not directly visible to us. So one of the most famous talked about thing was day zero. If you have to understand the day zero more deeply, it was a major crisis which was faced in Cape Town, where the entire city ran out of water, drinking water, clean water for utility purposes. And then Mexico followed next. And we were very close in Chennai, in India, to that level. And then a couple of years back, we have seen the major situations in Maharashtra. Maharashtra is one of the most powerful commercial states in the country, and a lot of farmers committed suicide due to the water crisis because there were extreme acute drought situations which were not able to meet the expectations of the farmers. Niti Aayog has been trying to flag this from some time, putting it out on the table that 21 cities are going to run out of water. 600 million people are facing high to extreme water stress in the country. So yeah, that has been coming out in our reports, in our conversations, that has been there. So how we try and see, how do we actually microscope and do these things? Gurgaon is another. We all understand Gurgaon is a city which is very close to the national capital as a part of NCR and has seen massive urbanization in the last 2 decades, leading to a lot of unplanned development, a lot of we were not able to take a lot of factors which could cause water crisis, and this is there we stand. It floods every year, and all the administration is sort of, under complete chaos to try and manage and still keep the civil procedures on. If we deep dive into it, we see the current water status. Definitely there is a 1.5 to 2 meters fall every year in the groundwater levels. Besides that, there are certain areas that are 4 to 5 meters of downfall. It's not saying that there are a couple of areas uh, which are still off the boat and receiving a proper supply, but then there are a couple of. Hello. I've been told that the audio connection is not proper. Can you all hear me?
From where did you get these?
Okay. Yeah. I'm. Hello.
Hi, we can hear you. You are audible.
We are able to hear you. Maybe
Thank you
some
so
people are not
much.
able to hear.
Yeah, I am
Okay.
able to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, so we can see this gradual fall in the water table, and we realize in the day-to-day scenario because the supply of water between our taps and sink is still the same. How we are managing it is another story altogether. And same is happening. These could be the probable reasons of this. Not saying this is the exhaustive list, but this is something which comes outrightly on the table. And if we move on to how we actually can manage this problem, is we need to have a better management system, and for that we need a better policy framework, a better governance institution, so that water as a complete focus element can be addressed. So we go ahead and talk about it. What are international mandates as a part of sustainable development goals stated by the United Nations share is, that yes, we have to provide clean water and sanitation to all as a basic essential facility. But that is the mandate which has been set. Now it is our role to sort of take it up and, micromanage or figure out solutions to it based on our context. Learning from what the other states did were, Andhra Pradesh focused on the farmer segment of how we can actually supply better quantity of water to Andhra Pradesh people and farmers. And in Maharashtra, there were Pani Panchayats made in an effort to sort of restore natural aquifers. And then similarly in Rajasthan also, due efforts were taken for water conservation. And we have a lot of stories to learn from the other countries of how they have tried to manage water better. There was a complete holistic package where there is proper legislation, better design and infrastructure, encouraging water and supporting water reuse, and then effective monitoring that were completely on the board. And then similarly from Israel as well. Israel is holistically trying to cater. We all understand that geographically, Israel is not based in one of the best locations to be able to, sort of navigate water resources. They are not blessed with any water, perennial river, or don't receive ample rainfall like India in comparative. And if we try and figure out a solution here, how we can actually address this problem, if we break it into segments, then definitely we need to improve our recharge of groundwater. We need to check illegal extraction. We have to promote the use of recycled water. We have to provide an alternative. We have to publicly share about the regulations. And we have to bring in easy and alternative solutions, because if people cannot use it, it doesn't get implemented. The purpose doesn't need its objective. And moving on, and when we tried to sort of figure out a solution to this, and we came down to a unit C at a district level to figure out. So there were more than 18 plus government departments. I've listed 22 of them who were trying to work on one vertical of the water or the other. say for an example, agriculture, we all understand deals with the farmers. IWMP is the Integrated Watershed Management Program by the government, and it focuses on construction of more ponds or more jod in, as we say in Haryana, in different villages, and that is a yearly activity that happens every year. Hydrology department, we all understand, it is essentially the groundwater cell in horticulture, and so on and so forth. There are different, the departments may be divided in terms of their jurisdiction responsibilities, or they might be dealing with one of the particular verticals of the government, but this is essentially how it happens. Irrigation is responsible for all the canals, pond authority is responsible holistically for the ponds, but then it is based at the state level. When it populates down to the district, then the story is all together, then the responsibility gets divided again. So there's so many bodies which are talking about water, and still the focus is not water. Somehow we're not able to reach there. So when we try and seek, on reflection, so this is also a part of research that we did before even initiating Gurujal as a unit, of why would we actually need one and how do we draft one. So this is why I'm sort of trying to give some context about it. When we tried and listed the problems, so we realized there are so many multiple stakeholders. There's government, there's NGOs, there's private organizations, there are corporates. In educational institution, everybody wants that. Everybody is trying to put in an effort to achieve it, but somehow still not able to do it. And because there is a lack of common vision, we don't have a single authority in this case. We report to so many authorities because the jurisdiction differs. And then there is a temporary solution to the issues. So Abhi, if I try and seek, okay, that very common problem solution that we have been trying to do is, my pond ran out of water. My pond is completely dry. So what I will do is, as a part of the irrigation department, I'll take the overflowing water from the canals and recharge my pond. But if you step back and try and see, is this actually the solution that we are talking about? The ponds historically were always filled with water. So why is the pond running out of water today? What is going wrong in the system, which we were doing earlier, and it's not happening anymore. In Gurugram district, there are more than 350 water bodies that has been identified as per the reports of GMDA and so many other organizations. But so many of these ponds are running out of water, and we come to the advanced solutions like rainwater harvesting systems, or afforestation used to act as such a good water cooling system, which is affected due to the urbanization. So we are trying to provide the temporary solution to the issues. There is no fixed timeline, and we understand, as a conclusion, we understand, there is no water shortage, but the management is inadequate in India. So how do we strengthen that? But when we try to figure out what is the best policy framework or solution, so there were pros and cons in different sort of segments, be it the civil societies, corporates, government, research organizations. So how do we actually bring in the best of the model? So the solution was part this essentially Gurujal stands for, it is a public-private partnership where the whole entire unit reports to the supported by it, and we collaborate with research organizations and academic institutions and civil society organizations to achieve our targets. So it's very important that we, while doing the things, we are being the same. Like there has to be a sustainable and system thinking approach in everything that we plan and we do. There has to be a watertight process to ensure the constant growth and supportive environment to promote innovation. We have to keep incorporating monitoring and evaluation with research and development at every step from time to time. And then definitely we have to club it and sandwich it with the local wisdom in while planning by more experiential learnings, getting it more bottoms up approach instead of sort of pushing our solutions to the community. And then we have to definitely aggregate the resource if we want the impact at scale, because we are running out of time. We cannot say, let's renovate one water body, or let's develop one biodiversity park, and that will be it. That will be the solution, perfect solution to every problem that we are facing. No, we have to sort of, go at scale. We are running out of time. So this is the framework of how Gurujal works, which I've sort of explained. We, as a part of any particular project life cycle, we defined our objectives so that we don't end up losing our focus. We have to improve the enforcement. We have to create more awareness. We have to completely support the compliance, because we saw in the previous slide of how 22 departments and their agendas align with water conservation. So why not just achieve their targets instead of creating something new? And how do we do that more effectively? Maybe there is a gap between the project visioning and delivery. What is that gap? So yeah, Gurujal plays an important role trying to help the departments to achieve better compliance, and then bringing the innovative design solutions to do that. So we're trying to restore the sense and still keeping it relevant. So we are not focusing on only financial capital as one form of capital. There has been a conversation, that even as a COVID situation, we all realize that, financial capital is something that we are really running out of. But maybe if we step back and see the social capital, the nature capital, the spiritual capital might have raised in such times. And how do we do that? How do we collectively achieve it? We have to be more collaborative. We have to be more committed and conscious. Apart from being data backed, we cannot just put out any statement or any solution without proper data. So analysis is a very important part, and the rest of my team members are going to deep dive into their particular verticals and share with you exactly how we are doing it, how we are constantly at every step trying to be data backed and well researched. Not saying that there is always a scope for improvement. It's always going to be a work in progress, but we're trying to take a step ahead, and we would love to invite more suggestions and feedbacks in the process. So yeah, Gurujal began slightly before the Jal Shakti Ministry came into being, and it was wonderful to see, that finally integration was happening at the central government platform as well, where the Ministry of Water and Sanitation and the Ministry of Rejuvenation of Water Bodies combined together under the Jal Shakti Ministry to sort of take it up, and this is how largely it flows. And Jal Shakti Abhiyan happened where the intervention areas were around 5 agenda items. How do we do it? So there definitely in how we can actually achieve those targets through these interventions. So this is something that we also participated in the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, and there were a bunch of activities which were sort of, trying to meet align with the agendas of the national mandates, but still at the district level, we had some level of customization, which as per our requirements, as per the district's requirement that we placed. And this is how we actually do it in Gurgaon. Like Gurgaon, we have to understand that any district is divided into urban and rural. And when we talk, and that is how the strategies, the authorities, the planning, everything changes in urban and rural, because the governance structure is completely different. The agencies, maybe Panchayati Raj institution is one institution, or the development and Panchayat office is one institution which is going to be effective in the rural areas. But in the urban areas, it's going to be municipal corporations, councils, and committees, which are going to essentially work in the urban areas. So yeah, this is the story of learnings and what happened, achievements and learnings. These are the 2 parameters which were defined under the Jal Shakti Abhiyan. The targets were set and the objectives were set, as we saw. And just comparing it, so yeah, SDGs, just going a little back, and we saw SDGs maintaining the mandates, and then Jal Shakti Abhiyan or the Jal Shakti Ministry took a step further and defined the targets and objectives for us. But if we take a step ahead and see what was undefined, so all these were open loops, right? The process was not mentioned, the tools were not mentioned, the capacity building, how empowerment of the all the people who are going to deliver things were not defined. Resources were not mentioned. And ground evaluation and monitoring, definitely there was database that was happening on periodic basis as a part of Jal Shakti Abhiyan as well, but nobody came and evaluated it on the ground, so to say. And why did it happen? Because probably we never knew what is the gravity of problem. We had no way of trying to get the accurate data points, and we had no idea of what as a district or any unit was doing as prior interventions. So when the Abhiyan was launched, all these factors were probably not very much accounted for. So yeah, if we see what were the gaps, then it was like doesn't account for the customization as per the context, which we are essentially talking about. Even if I am talking about Gurgaon is a smart, so Gurgaon divided into 4 development blocks: Sohna, Patodi, Farooq Nagar, and Gurugram. And when we deep dive into all these blocks, the nature of soil, the water texture, everything differs from one place to the other. Their problem statements vary. So how can we have a fixed solution? Probably, let me talk about Sona. Sona probably doesn't need water ponds as such, because it's got water up to the brim. There is so much salinity there. So we need to have a customized solution. And when a larger unit states it as an example, that every, as part of the Abhiyan, every village is supposed to have, say, 2 ponds, then that's probably, something which is not going to work, because the place is facing some other issues, and until that we understand that place, we cannot actually solve the problem. And then secondly, we never accounted for the capacity building that all these people, so the people who were supposed to deliver the agendas or the interventions of Jal Shakti Abhiyan were the people of the government. And all the engineers, all the SDOs, sub-divisional officers, or of Panchayati Raj institutions or the municipal bodies, but there was no training program. So they essentially were left confused. What is going to be my role in it? How do I do it? I don't know how to do decentralized wastewater management. I don't know how to measure it, because apparently decentralized wastewater management as an issue is very new to the country. We are still, as think tanks, as research organizations, we are trying to understand its productivity, its efficiencies, its challenges. So there is probably something missing. It's probably the systems thinking environment which is missing in the entire story. So Gurujal, as a part of Gurujal, we're trying to learn from all these experiences, and we've set a target of how do we actually make it better. So one of the things that we are trying to do is deep dive and try and understand that let's get 100% compliance to water schemes and water sensitive schemes at the unit level, which is going to be panchayat, or if there is a particular place. And how do we do that? We do run a very huge amount of tests so that we get some idea of how it is happening. Then we move to the policy changes. How do we bring in the policy changes? So when we're talking about how do we have independent smaller units at the panchayat level which can provide and which can assist in the delivery. So for example, biodiversity management committees is one thing which was conceived long back, but it was more like a paperwork. It couldn't materialize into its productivity. But if empowered, then BMCs can prove to be a very, very important tool, because it's the people of community who are going to come and be a part of it. And so they understand the community is the best. So it's very important that we identify these policy issues and all these frameworks which exist at the institutional levels, and empower them to deliver their best, provide more capacity building support there, instead of creating some new targets and sort of pushing it through it. Even if we are stating the mandates, it's very important to sort of customize it for the context that we're talking about. And how do we bring in the construction and infrastructure and improve the rankings of the parameters? So we all understand that NITI Aayog has been following up water management works and has laid down the water management water composite management index, which is a very important tool, and then definitely they are improvising those parameters every year, but it can be a good support mechanism if you're trying to see this see the management of this entire issue altogether. So how do we try and do it? We try it through different interventions. Support a pond is one thing that we're talking about, of how to, you know, do the decentralized wastewater and then use that treated water to actually recharge the pond instead of using fresh water coming from a canal supply, which could have been used for drinking purposes to navigate and then fill the pond for it. Waterproofing, how do we actually fix the leaks, or bring in more design solutions to mitigate the consumption patterns when we talk. Connect the Drops is all about creating more awareness around it, because communications has to go hand in hand with what we are trying to do in terms of technology. And we have, so today we are definitely talking about the different technological aspects, but there is a communications team within Gurujal which is trying to, you know, take the word, be it to the community or be it to the digital social media, to achieve the target. Then how do we actually, so we discussed about having better rules and regulations, and how do we communicate about those rules and regulations to the people, because they are sort of compacted in heavy bylaws. So if there is a 50-page bylaw, then me as a citizen, before constructing my house, I wouldn't probably go through every law. I would just want to go through the things that are relevant for me. So how do I concise it, make a checklist out of it and promote it? And biodiversity management is how to increase more landscaping, more biodiversity parks of the urban city forest, essentially all about the afforestation. But it's not just afforestation, because we have to still keep it relevant, right? So how do we do it in a way that, you know, that is appreciated by the local community as well? Because we definitely don't want the community to stand against us when we propose an idea to them. They have to understand its relevance. They have to understand and be able to appreciate its importance. And how will that happen? That will be possible only if the government is also supporting it in certain ways. And then through Jal Sanrakshan, we're trying to support the problems of the farmers, and, you know, how do we actually promote water, you know, all those technologies which utilize limited amount of water. So yes, this is something, and then we are trying to follow this entire life cycle of how we keep it sustainable. How do we actually stay, well within limits, and still keep checking ourselves, keep rechecking our approach, and keep reinventing the wheel to achieve the targets. So I'll quickly take you through a video that in the initial months of Gurujal, all we did was focused how to get actual data points, how to understand the gravity of the issues, which was one of the problems that we were facing as somebody who wants to solve or wants to assist with better water management approach, but was not able to do that because the data points were not very, very clear. So I'll quickly take all of us through this video. Yeah. So this is how, and in what we see in just like a half a minute video is a lot of work which has been, sitting with departments day in and day out and going through their multiple files, and try and analyze how do we actually bring in the hard data from there, which is easy to communicate with all of us and helps in, creating more awareness, sensitizing the people in the proximity for whom it would really matter. For all the people of Gurgaon, it's very important to understand that, what is going to happen 15 years down the line, how our kids are going to survive in this place when we see that NCR, and there are different legs of how we would be witnessing this problem. We wouldn't definitely understand, it's probably in a way that we are losing the immunity of the city by not being able to take care of our ecological balance in the best ways possible. And there are different stakeholders to whom we try and reach out to, engage better, to sensitize them. And we support better enforcement. And these are different mechanisms through which we are trying to achieve the targets. And reviving wastewater and pond authorities. Again, it's at the state level of how that's a very, very important and crucial unit. If we see in the perspective of water management, if you read the objectives of the pond and wastewater management authorities, it includes everything which is related with the pond, which was missing in the initial approach when we were dividing the agendas or the different verticals of a pond restoration amongst 10 different departments. At least reviving the pond and wastewater management authority is going to solve that issue. And then how do we actually work and empower the BMCs at the panchayat level, the block level, because these will be the people who will do it instead of us going and doing there, which is going to add more resource cost, and we are going to take much more time to understand the context. These people definitely come with a lot of local wisdom. And how do we promote the use of drip and micro irrigation? How do we bring in more alternative promoting the tree plantation? And we try and do it in different design solutions in terms of, framework of how we are actually quoting it, branding it, sort of promoting the idea so that people can connect with it, is also very, very important. And towards the closure, I would just want to say that for every vertical that we try and initiate, we're trying to see keywords. Definitely the entire project life cycle is in the play, but apart from that, identify a solution, how to the best stakeholder to obtain the solution. And this is where we sort of, connect with the community, the officers, the civil society organizations. So it is a wholesome communication plan which is going on. So there are different ways of how we can do it. And I would definitely love to explain at some different point of how stakeholder alignment becomes a very, very important criteria. And before we push one solution, we really focus on doing more pilots and test trials so that we understand the loopholes of the area and then incorporate it back in the loop with better solutions, and then expanding the solutions. So maybe even something as basic as rainwater harvesting system, there's not one design which is applicable to all sorts of places. We need to understand that the soil texture does matter. We need to understand that the place or the arena matters. Their need matters. So we cannot just say ki, let's take up a target and let's make like 300 rainwater harvesting systems this monsoon. So that is not going to help. There has to be a research which needs to come along, and then we have to understand and design accordingly, plan accordingly, and then implement it. Definitely I do appreciate the campaign mode, but then there is something that needs to go along with the campaign. So these are the targets and the goals that we have set for ourselves in Gurujal, that we are trying to achieve this in Gurgaon district of Haryana in the larger public interest. And this is where I would close and sort of, invite Sachin from my team to take you through the another leg and then a very important vertical. Besides communication is the technical wing, where he'll give you a brief and then we'll follow with the remaining speakers. Sachin, please take it on.
Thank you, Shubhi ma'am, for the wonderful introduction about the work that we do here in a Gurujal and the importance of having a strong legislative framework that needs to be addressed for closing the gaps regarding our water laws. Today we will discussing about the importance and the need of rainwater harvesting in the district of Gurugram and what Gurujal as an organization is trying to achieve. Before we do a deep dive about the Gurugram and the status of rainwater here, let's discuss briefly about the traditional method of rainwater harvesting in India. Traditionally, India has had a rich heritage of building structure for harvesting rainwater, from which we stored water was used year round. I will briefly go over few different type of rainwater harvesting structure. The first one is Jalara. They are rectangular shaped structure which were built traditionally to ensure the water supply for community purpose, religious rites and royal ceremonies, but not for a drinking purpose. These type of structure are mainly found in the state of Rajasthan. And the second one is Baoli. These are community structures that are strategically built for everybody to have water access. They were often landscaped and placed in areas of trade routes and therefore served as a resting places. They were found in the state of Delhi, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. And third one is Tanka. Tanka are the original form of traditional rainwater harvesting structure which are used to collect the runoff from the catchment area or the area where the rainfall fell. Catchment area could be the rooftop area and the open area. Once the entire tank was filled, it is sufficient to serve a family of around 5 to 6 members over an entire period. These structures were mostly found in state of Rajasthan. The fourth one is Kund. Kund are also traditional rainwater harvesting structure, but are rainwater could serve drinking water purpose. Kund have been found all over India. However, the purpose of Kund may differ from place to place in our country. In most part of country, Kunds are located near the place of worship and serve as a source of water for holy baths and other ritual activities. And the last one is lakes and ponds can be natural or artificial by nature. In many parts of the country where fresh water is scarce, lakes are constructed in depression areas where the rainwater from the catchment area drain into the lakes, which would essentially serve as a source of water supply for the rest of the year for the different purposes. These structures play a significant role in recharging of groundwater in the region. So giving a little bit of context to our subject matter of program, India is a diverse country where one part of the country receives as an average of as little as 250 mm to another part of the country which receives more than 3000 mm of seasonal rainfall over a period of 30 years. If we look at the map of India, the state of Rajasthan is the least state which receives minimum rainfall over the year, whereas the northeastern side of our country receive maximum amount of rainfall during the season as well as annually. The variation of amount of rainfall received is caused by a number of factors, which may be the topographical factor, climatical factor, the type of forest cover, and the type of forest in the region. Haryana, being the neighboring state to the Rajasthan, faces similar rainfall condition and therefore receives some of the least rainfall in the country in comparison to the other part of the country. During the monsoon season, Haryana receives only 554.7 mm of rainfall. The reason of the least rainfall received in the state of Haryana is the climatic condition, topography, and the forest cover in the state stand around 3.62% of the total geographical area. The type of forest in the state is tropical dry deciduous forest, tropical thorn forest, and subtropical thorn forest. And it is known that the cloud formation of the rainfall for these type of forests is very less in comparison to the other type of forests that are found in India.
That only a fraction of what we have is being stored of the amount of available water, and that is what is essentially threatening our water security in our current scenario. So if we are to move towards a water secure future, then we have to definitely look towards increasing the amount of water that we store in large structures or large pond-like structures. So now we know that India has a rich history of water conservation, and it's a practice as old as 2 millennia. We as Indians have ingeniously integrated the techniques of water management in our traditional architecture that Sachin sir has quite extensively spoken about. And this is to deal with the wide temporal and spatial variability that the country receives in terms of rain. The wettest parts of India receives around 11,500 millimeters of rain, whereas the driest parts receive 50 millimeters of rain annually. So naturally, to deal with this variability, we as Indians have integrated it into our sensibility and into our architecture. So they traditionally hold a very, very big importance in terms of storing rainwater, because rainwater can be used without any much further extensive treatment for secondary purposes. And they provide water security in areas where groundwater has already grown saline. And then they are really important structures in terms of recharging groundwater. And they recharge about 1 to 2 to 3.6% of the annual groundwater recharge, and that is quite a significant amount. And nevertheless, and a very important point is that they serve as traditional hubs in any locality or in a local community. Because even till date, we have in rural areas, all the crematoriums and all the temples are located near such water bodies. We have seen this map multiple times during the presentation, but what I'm just gonna sort of highlight is that in Haryana, just to understand the gravity of the situation, in Haryana, we have 19 districts out of the 22 under the dark zone, which essentially means that we are over extracting our groundwater resources and in comparison to how much we are recharging. And in Gurugram district alone, if we look, it's over 300%. So the ratio of us extracting water to recharging is 3 to 1. And that is a huge, huge problem that contributes to the entire situation. Moreover, as ma'am has already mentioned, Sachin sir has already mentioned, we have an exponential increase in the amount of population in Gurugram district. And due to which an immense amount of infrastructural development has taken place, and due to which a number of water body sites have been encroached upon for land development. So naturally, 641 pond sites or water body sites, as we see in 1956, have been decreased to 123 in 2018, according to the official revenue records. And moreover, another problem that we see currently on ground is that the water that comes into the existing water bodies, that in the remaining few water bodies, is wastewater of origin. So whatever water is percolating into the groundwater is of wastewater origin, and therefore it has a major, major potential of polluting our groundwater tables. So definitely, the problem is twofold, and we need to manage this properly. And so how do we do this? We have our national mandates. Ma'am has spoken extensively about this. What I'll be focusing on is the renovation of traditional water bodies according to Jal Shakti Abhiyan. These are the intervention areas, and I'll be focusing on renovation of traditional water bodies. So just to understand the hierarchy of things, we have the Jal Shakti Abhiyan at the national level, and then we have the district of Gurugram, the state of Haryana essentially, that is taking an active step in towards making Gurujal an entity to fight water conservation issues. And then we have a dedicated vertical towards this, which is Sapota Pond. And then under Sapota Pond, we have 320 water bodies that are targeted in both urban and rural areas. And then obviously, as I mentioned, so we have aligned our objectives with the national mandate, which is Jal Shakti Abhiyan, but also we've taken a holistic approach to this in order to make sure that we are reinstating the cultural and social values that ponds hold in our local communities. And how do we do that? We do that through extensive engagement of our local community during the project, and even after the project has been sanctioned in that particular area. And so ma'am has briefly given an overview of the methodology, and each of that generic sort of methodology has been adapted to each of the verticals. And I'll be sort of going through this methodology phase by phase, not essentially going through each step, but definitely giving you an overview of how we do this. So the first phase is collecting a lot of data. And we make sure that all of our decisions that we implement on ground is data backed. And so firstly, we have our pond profiling step, and that is essentially cross verification of all the information that we've gotten from Gurugram Metropolitan Development Authority. And they had shared a list of 800 odd water bodies that could be restored in the district of Gurugram. And then we sort of shortlisted it down to the ones that come under the jurisdiction of District Administration Gurugram, and how we can sort of restore them. And we go to each site and we recce each site and collect the information, the physical information about the site, the kind of wastewater that is coming in, the depth, the latitude, longitude, all of those cross verification of data happens. And then we do an extensive administration approval stage and drone surveys in order to understand the current scenario from an aerial point of view and understand if that area is encroached, and then moving on to demarcate the area with ownership data from the revenue office and superimposing it and making sure that that area of the pond is again registered with the revenue record, so that in future it might not be encroached. And then extensive testing takes place in both in terms of water and soil tests. Water tests are done to understand what kind of water is coming in to our ponds. Most of the time what we're dealing with is domestic wastewater, but Haryana is a state where we have many industrial setups within the domestic setup. So that there are times where we see spikes of nickel or beryllium or dyes, and so we have to sort of make sure that each of the design solutions that we suggest or the technologies that we suggest are catering to all of those different pollutant classes. Soil testing is done to understand the kind of native species that can be planted and landscaped accordingly. And what we do is that we have different key performance indicators or KPIs, and we measure each one of them. We make sure that these KPIs, as we will further see on, it's not just quantitative quantitative, but they're also qualitative. And we also make sure that each of these different factors have a different weightage. And so understandably, they have different weightages in understanding or in designing solutions. And what we keep on asking ourselves throughout the entire process is, what are the benchmarks that we are following? What are the standards we are following? Obviously, we have the national mandates, which is CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board, but we also have made sure that we are adapting to the local community and local community needs. And then we move on to the construction phase, where we, after the solution has been designed, after a certain technology has been designed for that particular location, we start the civil work and the landscaping part of the project. And we make sure that the local community starts getting engaged from this point onwards, so that they know what is happening in their community and they are actively involved in this entire process. we employ Manrega workers. Manrega workers are from the village itself, so they know what is happening on site. And definitely, again, we have key performance indicators that we measure, and we sort of make sure that we're documenting all of this during the entire process. And then finally, we have the operations and maintenance part, which is essentially the most important part in order to ensure the sustainability of the project. I've mentioned community mobilization over here, but if we go down to the previous slide, community mobilization starts way, way earlier. And we make sure that the entire community is aware of what is happening. And operations and maintenance, I think one of the USPs of Gurujal is that after the project has been commissioned by us or has been handed over to us, we make sure that we are selecting representatives from the community itself, and they are sort of taking care of the project as well. And it's not just us who are overlooking the operations and maintenance. So we do a very extensive training process over there as well. What I want to talk about a little bit is how robust our sort of methodology is. Currently, we're working on 13 different sites across the district, and we have 17 more in pipeline. And each of these sites have used this methodology because it is a feedback data-driven model. So we're generating data at each step of the model, and we're sort of making sure that we're taking back the data and feeding it back to the previous step where things might have been designed better or sort of implemented better. So definitely there is a feedback model that is going on, and we're generating data at every single point. And definitely we have indicators that have different weightages according to the importance at that particular stage of the project life cycle. And so it is quite replicable across all parts of the district, even through the varying topography and the varying kind of wastewater that comes in. But definitely it's a very, very robust model. And then moving on, how do we document all of this is that we have dashboards that is transparent to all of our team members internally, but also we project all of this information on our website. And so this is very, very useful for external stakeholders to understand at what stage of project we are in and why we are there. And we provide a sort of transparent system where all of us are accountable to the public as well. So definitely we have a strong documentation system in place, and we are sort of upgrading to a much more user-friendly sort of dashboard. And so this is the current state, and this is the updated version, and we're sort of still in development phases for that. And we're also developing a pond app, which we will be using for profiling new locations. We currently have profiled over 90 locations out of the 320 projects. And so what we will be using, the ultimate aim would be that we will be integrating the information that is generated from here to our dashboards. And so the reflection and the changes will be almost immediate. And so we do this with the help of our amazing on-field monitoring team. We have sort of trained them over the past year or so to understand the nuanced variables and what to look out for and what not to look out for, how to record data. And all of this is being monitored internally by us, the engineers, and the manager, and understanding the kind of data that we're generating both qualitatively and quantitatively. One of the things that I would like to mention is that these heroes of ours, they are ears and eyes on our field, and they are from the local region. And so they really add the human element to our entire monitoring system. And so we have started sort of procuring a standard operating procedure. And as far as my best knowledge goes, we are the first ones to do so in a methodological way in 727 districts in India. So although this is not a hard and fast guideline on how to carry out, pond rejuvenation, but it is like sharing our learnings through the entire process, and so that we can, dissipate the knowledge that we've gained over the past year. Now I'm just gonna hand it over to Anjali. She is gonna talk about an equally important part about water restoration and water conservation in the district, and that is talking about the forest cover in India. Over to you, Anjali.
Thank you so much, Shaini, for the insights concerning various tools and development of our work concerning pond rejuvenation. I will be talking about the biodiversity management vertical and how we have taken up active research and planning for intensive afforestation. So India is one of the 10 most forest-rich countries and also one of the 17 mega biodiverse region of the world. We all depend on forest for our survival, from the air we breathe to the wood we use. Besides providing habitat for animals and livelihood for humans, forests also offer watershed protection, prevent soil erosion, and mitigate climate change. But in the past few centuries, with the exponential increase in the population, the demand for resources that derive from forest has also increased in a likewise manner. So there is one report published by Forest Survey of India in December 2019, that is India State of Forest Report. ISFR is very important source of information on forest and is widely used across the central and state government, forestry professionals, international organization, and other stakeholders. So according to ISFR, the total forest cover in India is 21.67% of the total geographical area of the country. So forest cover is basically all land having trees more than 1 hectare in area with tree canopy density of more than 10%, irrespective of ownership, legal status of the land, and species compositions of the tree. So based on canopy density, forest cover divided into different classes. First is very dense forest that consists 3.02% of the total geographical area with the canopy density more than 70%. Moderately dense forest is 9.39% with the canopy density between 40 to 70%, and open forest is 9.26% with the canopy density between 10 to 40%. Now, Haryana is situated in the northern part of the country and is primarily an agricultural state. So, according to ISFR, Haryana state has the lowest forest cover in India, that is 3.62% of the total geographical area. And as per ISFR 2017, Haryana had a forest cover of 3.59% of its total area, and in ISFR 2019, it became 3.62%. So there is a total increase of 0.03%, that is quite negligible. Now, Gurugram is one of the southern districts of Haryana, and as per ISFR, the total forest cover in Gurugram district is 9.24% of its total geographical area, with moderately dense forest, open forest, and scrubland. Scrubland is when the canopy density is less than 10%. Now I'll talk about some global and national mandates that we are following. First is Bonn Challenge. Bonn Challenge is launched in 2011 by the government of Germany and International Union for Conservation of Nature, that is IUCN. So it is a global effort under which 56 countries has pledged to restore 150 million hectare of world's deforested and degraded land by 2020 and 350 million hectare by 2030. So Bonn Challenge acts as an implementation vehicle for national priorities such as food and water security and rural development. Now, at the United Nations Conference of the Party, that is COP 2015 in Paris, India also joined the Bonn Challenge and pledged to restore 21 million hectare of degraded and deforested land by 2030. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change published a draft national policy, forest policy in March 2018. And the aim of the policy is to maintain at least one third, that is 33% of total land area under forest cover or tree cover. Intensive afforestation is also one of the major component of national mandate for water conservation, that is Jal Shakti Abhiyan. So biodiversity is the diversity of plants and animals life within a region, and the major component that they need for their survival are food, water, shelter, and space. So worldwide, habitat destruction is the major cause for biodiversity loss. Similarly, in Gurugram district, the major reason behind the decreasing population of wild flora and fauna is the loss of the habitat. Um, um, is the loss of the habitat that is majorly caused by deforestation, clearing area for agriculture purposes, overpopulation, and mining activities. So in Guruj, biodiversity management vertical is majorly focusing on conserving and protecting the natural habitat for the wild flora and fauna by intensive afforestation and by development of pockets of biodiversity zones in the Gurugram district. So in biodiversity management vertical, we have three major plans. Plan 1 is pond landscaping, which comes under support of pond vertical, and our target is to complete pond landscaping 320 pond sites in both urban as well as rural area of Gurugram district. And the total area that will cover is approximately equal to 105 hectare, and 1 lakh plus plantation will be done. And plan 2 is establishment of 2 biodiversity parks, which cover an area of approximately 324 hectare, and 3.5 lakh plus plantation will be done. And plan 3 is establishment of 1 urban city forest, which cover an area of approximately 810 hectare, and 8 lakh plus plantation will be done. So if we add the total area of all the three plants, we'll get a value of 1,239 hectare. That means we can restore 12.39 square kilometer of degraded land by simply executing these three plants, which is approximately equal to 1% of the total geographical area of Gurugram district. So if now we have a forest cover of 9.24%, later it become 10.24%, and the overall target will be achieved with the help of these different departments. Now our first plan is pond landscaping. The landscape has an important role in making the relationship between the nature and the human. It also has a significant role in deepening this relation. So after visiting several sites, we realized that the pond aquatic ecosystem is in danger, like in case of Bodhira village, which is located in Faruknagar block of Gurugram district. In this pond, we have seen that the fishes are dying, and the major reason behind it is the uncontrolled growth of water hyacinth. Water hyacinth is an invasive species, though it's helped in cleaning the water at some extent, but it is dangerous for aquatic ecosystem because it grows very rapidly and can form thick layer over the water, which impacts the flow of water and also blocking sunlight to native submerged plants. And the decaying process depletes the amount of dissolved oxygen in the water. As the oxygen level decline, the fishes are unable to survive. So we decided to remove the water hyacinth from the pond, and you can clearly see the result. Now the pond has enough oxygen to sustain aquatic life. What are the main objectives of pond landscaping? First is water purification by natural ways. As domestic wastewater is the main source of pollution in all the ponds, we can remove the pollutant by natural ways like providing aeration to the ponds or by installing floating reed beds. Second is air purification. Fresh air is one luxury that money can't buy, and plants have always been known to clean our air by sucking and trapping harmful gases. But not all the plants have the same ability to bring down pollution and clean the air. Third is pond value recreation. A good landscape near a pond improve moods, reduce stress, and enhance a sense of balance among people. It also increase in value of land, preserve critical wildlife habitat, and people love to gather and share experiences, socialize, and to build community bond in common green spaces. Fourth is waste management. almost every village has a temple near a pond. So the waste that is generated from the temple, like the bulk of flowers, leaves of plants, coconut shells, milk and curd, including the polybags, is directly dumped into the pond without even any segregation of biodegradable and non-biodegradable waste. So instead of letting tons of waste going down the pond or in any other water body, it can be collected at one place by installing dustbin near the ponds or by making composite pits for biodegradable waste. Last is ecological balance. Ecological balance is used to describe the relationship between the equilibrium between the human equilibrium between the living beings and their environment. So this balance is very important. It ensures the survival, existence, and stability of the environment. So these are the conceptual plans. Before executing any work on the ground, we first make conceptual plans to develop the initial ideas for the project. It includes the designs of interactions, experiences, processes, and strategies. After conceptual plans, we design overall landscaping plan in two phases. In first phase, we work on the concrete part of the design, and in second phase, we'll more focus on green cover. These documents are prepared to collate all the information and is used to convey a summary of all the important details that are important to convey all the stakeholders concerned. Now, Aravalli Hills of India are the oldest mountain ranges on earth and estimated to be more than 1 billion-year old, spanning 692 kilometers from Wazirabad in North Delhi to Palampur in Gujarat. It is home to rare forest, endangered wildlife, and of course humans. The Aravalli landscape in the National Capital Region is of great ecological significance, as the region is facing great environmental challenges due to increasing population pressure and urbanization. Aravallis are acting as the only green lungs for the region. Therefore, the protection, management, and conservation of Aravalli in the region are vital for ecological and environmental sustainability of the region. So, the major threats for Aravalli ranges are deforestation, land degradation, encroachments, development activities, and mining. Now, why the protection and conservation of Aravalli Hills are important? As I said, Aravallis are ecologically very significant and forms the catchments of rivers and nalas that originated from the hills and irrigate the plain. It has also been identified as an important source of groundwater recharge zone and are very important to the future groundwater security of South Haryana towns like Gurugram and Faridabad, and provide sweet drinking water to millions of people. One of the major role of Aravalli is it acts as an effective shield against desertification. It also consists of sacred grove forests like Mangarbani, which is home to around 300 native plant species, 120 bird species, and many more animals. So the Aravallis provide the only major forest cover in the state of Haryana, which has a total forest cover of just 3.62%, which is lowest among Indian states. So we are now recognizing the importance of the region and now taking steps to protect it. So there is a need to preserve the natural resources in the world's oldest mountain chain by conservation of flora and fauna and water resources by developing pockets of biodiversity in the form of biodiversity parks and urban city forests, which may act as an example of resource conservation in the Aravalli. So conservation aim is to create a self-sustaining ecosystem, basically an area of interactions that generates ecological services. So there is an announcement made by Honorable Chief Minister of Haryana under Jal Shakti Abhiyan to develop two biodiversity parks in Gurugram districts in the Aravalli Hills of Kasan, Damdama, and Kerala village. As I told earlier, the main objective of the whole biodiversity management vertical or biodiversity park is to conserve the natural habitat of wild flora and fauna Also to improve the quality of air and water, water and soil, and promote tourism, and to create recreational spaces for local community. Also to promote nature education among students and create environment awareness among the people. So first biodiversity park will develop in Aravali Hills of Damdama and Kerala village. Damdama is already famous in NCR region because of the presence of one of the biggest rain-fed lake of Haryana state, that is Damdama Lake, and also one of the popular picnic spot of the district. So because of disturbing rainfall pattern, the lake has reduced in size. So reviving Damdama Lake is also part of the project, because lake provide vital stepping stone that are essential for the migration, dispersal, and genetic exchange of wild species. So the total area that will cover is approximately equal to 202 hectare. That means we can restore 2.02 square kilometer of degraded land by developing Damdama and Kasan Biodiversity Park. Damdama and Kerala Biodiversity Park. Now, second biodiversity park will develop in Aravali Hills of Kasan village, where our pond rejuvenation work is already going on. So both the Damdama and Kasan biodiversity parks will act as a groundwater recharge zone, as well as wildlife habitat and corridor zone. A sink for air pollution, a preventer of desertification, and likely influence rainfall pattern through evapotranspiration processes. So the total area that will cover is approximately equal to 121 hectare. That means we can restore 1.21 square kilometer of degraded land in Gurugram district by development of Kasan Biodiversity Park. These are the summarized document for both Damdama and Kasan Biodiversity Park. Now, urban city forest. An urban forest is a forest that grow within a city, and it play an important role in ecology of human habitats in many ways. Aside from beautification of the urban environment, it play an important role in benefiting the environmental condition of the city. So the total area that will cover in urban city forest is approximately equal to 810 hectare. So biodiversity degradation is going on continuously, but conservation efforts are also going on. Thus, we are still able to improve the green cover. For further improvement, we all should help the effective implementation of a region and master plan of the area. So these are the this is the action plan for both biodiversity park and urban city forest. Thank you. Over to you, Shubhi ma'am.
Thank you, Anjali, Sachin, and Shiny. With all of them completing their segments and parts, we move towards the conclusion. Since the agenda for today's webinar was to how we were using the tools of MNE, that's monitoring and evaluation, in our processes, and how we try and improve the work through the monitoring and evaluation results that we received during the course of our actions, was the agenda largely. So thank you for all of you to sort of listening to it and raising your queries. What we received in terms of queries is something which is more related to enforcement and compliance. We'll take up a couple of them, but before that, we have sort of, tried to address the tigers in the room, which is restoration of water bodies, or which is sort of, developing more biodiversity parks around it. We took last 1 year to try and understand, gather all the data, and do the backend mapping, which is essentially very, very required when we try and do a successful project on ground. So we've done good amount of work. The pilots are functional in a couple of sites, and we have some results which we'll be sharing as and when it happens. It's through various forms of media, through our platforms, which is website, through the social media. Yeah, so that's what we do. But what we're trying to conclude here is, how do we actually use all these tools that we've been able to develop, or the processes that we have been able to carve in past 1 year to, sort of promote the better implementation of the national mandates, which is the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, Jal Jeevan Mission, Atal Bhujal Yojana, to sort of translate their objectives on ground very efficiently, which is all related to water in a way. And then we have like a recently announced state mandate, which is Meri Pani Meri Virasat. Again, it definitely can help conserving the water, because it's more around, promoting alternative crops, which is the water, efficient crops to sort of and increasing the MSP. So definitely we don't often see the linkage of one policy to the other, but then definitely there is an interplay which is happening and influences the choice of the recipient. And we come back to, sort of, in a way that we are trying to funnel all the resources to get the best. While we do that, we're trying to improve the management and monitoring and evaluation of the entire process that we do, and keep it very bound. So we, in terms of nature of Gurujal, is also like we function as an assistant organization to all the member departments who are a part of us, or as a part of the board members, try and improve their functionality in the best ways possible. Our role is largely to support with project monitoring and evaluation to different aspects of their policy schemes and programs. This is something that we have been able to do, and again we try and maintain better transparency by showcasing all our achievements and failures or learnings all on the website, and keeping very frank and candid in all our approaches, because we believe in co-creating the space. Even in terms of all the choice of the initiatives that we have begun came from the community's demands itself, and after that that in ways went into the project life cycle and has become a part of our choices majorly. So monitoring is, as Anjali and Shiny both explained, that we keep live monitoring, and that you can also see how it progresses, and you can visit our website, and that is available. Every minor detail that we have within the organization, we try and make it available for the larger crowd, so that you can be on the same page as well. You can also see and witness and have some exercise, and that also helps develop a better understanding of the scenario we all are in together. What I always try and want to say, and what it actually happens is, like, government is the facilitator, right? And it's ultimately the community, the end organizations who are closer to the community become the participants or the executors, implementers on ground. And in different ways, we have partnered, say, with Terry School of Advanced Studies to understand better the SONA block, or in terms of, partnering with Navjyoti India Foundation to sort of do more community mobilization, effective communications at schools. So we're sort of partnering with different organizations to achieve the targets, and then sharing the best case practices, making it open source to all the people who are connected with us or who would want to understand better. And the goal is to develop a framework, which Gurujal is also in a pilot in a way, and if it functions out, if we are able to develop the tools, processes, then definitely, if the national mandates have to be translated on the ground, similar such units can be formed as per the discretion of the various authorities for better conclusion. So yeah, now we'll move on to the couple of Q&As. We'll not be able to take a lot of them. We'll take just 3 of them. So Tushar mentioned that, could you explain the 308% groundwater extraction mentioned in the video? Yes, Tushar, thank you for the query. This is the information analyzed and collated by the district groundwater cell, that's the hydrology department, which is a part of the agriculture board. How do they see it? Is they have compared the trend analysis. They have got the consumption patterns from the previous years, and a groundwater board of India maintains a website where they sort of update it on an annual basis, pre and post monsoons, the level of groundwaters, and they try and analyze that data. So yeah, 308% is the number which comes from that. I hope I answer you better. In case you need a better clarification, please drop it in the chat box and we'll note it down and we'll get back to you on this. Next is a question by Uma. Does Gurujal have the legal authority to take action against small industries extracting water or polluting existing water bodies in the urban villages in Gurgaon? Thank you for the question, Uma. But directly, Gurujal is not the executive or the enforcement authority. What we do is we keep monitoring the data, and we're not really active in the industry per se. That is more HSIIDC department in HSPC, which is Haryana State and Pollution Control Board, which is directly responsible. So what happens is, like, all the industries are supposed to have STPs or the micro STPs depending upon their consumption patterns and the way and the quality of waste water which is being produced, ETPs and STPs. And the outlets of all these ETPs and STPs are supposed to be live monitored and maintained on the HSPCB website. So that is where you can actually check if a particular industry is, unleashing and what is the quality of water that they are sort of, generating. And then exercise can be done in terms of explanation call can be called for these people. But Gurujal is directly not responsible to just go ahead and take decisions in that matter. We support the respective departments to take such decisions and to exercise, and the guidelines behind it, the logics behind it, the way of how it should happen, basically the process streamlining and the support in the design of it. Next, we move to Shubham's question, which says, does Gurujal focus on the whole Gurugram, or it has picked some water blocks specifically to begin with? Thank you, Shubham. Gurujal has interventions in the entire district, but definitely we have limitation of resources like any other organization. And also it's a choice that we have made that we'll work on certain pilots, see its outcomes, and learn from it and then replicate it elsewhere. But there is no limited or specific blocks of words that we have taken up. The interventions are as per the need, demand, and the community's eagerness to sort of take it up. So if you think there's a particular ward or a block which is interested in certain intervention, we'll definitely go out and do it to provide all the sort of support that we can. Yeah. So we'll thank you so much. I think we'll close the questions here, and we'll try and respond to all the questions that you've posted on the group and get back to you on this. But in the meantime, thank you for being that engaging audience and putting out your queries. I see a lot of queries and I see a lot of enthusiasm, I would say, around the environmental development of the Gurugram district, and henceforth as a country, as a world also, we really need that. There's no other way that we will be able to survive and with the sort of practices that we are doing every day. We definitely need a notch-up action, and we need it quicker and sooner. But at the same time, we need it well researched, we need it data back, we need to timely monitor what we are doing, because doing the wrong thing could be like a major harm in comparison to not doing anything. So that is something that we have to take a conscious call on, and we in Gurujal are trying to do that in the best ways possible. So thank you all. I think we'll close the session here. And again, a thank you to G Local Evaluation Week to sort of giving us an opportunity to showcase our practices and the processes that we are following. Hoping to see you all soon sometime. Thank you. Good day.